Hello world and everybody in the Google group. Today is the video for my third objective complete. So let's begin. The adventurers made their way along the path, taking them out of the clearing leading towards the boundary of the dark forest, with the sounds of the sobbing witch slowly fading away into the distance. As they made their way out of the last spattering of trees, the adventurers saw the light of the full moon illuminating the river up ahead, dancing on the surface like a million diamonds sparkling. The moonlight was also reflecting off another wet surface, the putrid slime left by the plague bearers. Maggots were writhing in the green discharge, making it look like it was alive. "Well, it's not hard to see which way they went," Bob growled. "Looks like they crossed the river," Elvira said while pointing to the opposite riverbank, which had caved in some, and had long gouges in the side that looked like finger marks. There was also a puddle of green goo where they must have struggled to get up the bank. "Guess we're crossing the river again," moaned Clyde. They walked along the riverbank for a while to find a suitable place to cross. When he noticed the water level dropped, Bob walked into the icy water, which didn't quite reach his belly, and trudged across. Clyde followed after waiting patiently for Elvira to climb onto his back. Once reaching the other side of the river, they easily found a rocky area to climb the bank, then doubled back to find the disgusting trail left by their prey. With their breath puffing out in little white clouds, the trio made their way higher and higher in altitude into the rocky mountainous wasteland. Sharp bits of rock bit and cut Bob's padded feet. He left bloody footprints on the rocky ground as they made their way higher still. Still riding on Clyde's back, Elvira added, cuddled into his mane for warmth. Even though she was wearing furs, the wind's frigid bite still tormented her. "Look!" came Bob's shout from up ahead. Once the other two caught up, they saw what he had seen. The 10 plague bearers lurching through the craggy landscape up ahead. Taking off at a run after them, the adventurers ran through the valley and towards the exit. They didn't notice a large mound of dirt up ahead of them, to the right. The plague bearers disappeared around a bend at the top of the valley. As the trio approached, the mound of dirt and rocks exploded out, and a great pink worm, the size of a whale, rose out of the ground and flopped back down to crackle with static electricity that it used to paralyze its enemies. Clyde let out a frightened whinny and reared up on his hind legs. This dislodged Elvira, who hit the rocky ground hard, smacking her head into a particularly jagged rock. Looking at the bright red blood that stained her hands, she started to unsheath her sword when the giant worm reared itself up and opened a perfectly round mouth that contained rows and rows of needle-sharp teeth. So I completed my objective 3, which means that they defeat the worm. So let's have a look and see what the options are before we roll the dice. So number 1, Bob defeats the worm. He flies above the worm, raining down his needle-sharp tail spikes. This has no effect, so he flies down to grab the worm to lift it part way off the ground with his brute strength, dropping the worm and spearing it on some jagged rocks. Option 2, Elvira defeats the worm, running towards it, screaming her ear-piercing war cries. Dodging the worm's sharp teeth, jumping onto an outcrop beside the worm, slicing open its side with her sword and spilling its innards all over the rocks. Option 3. Clyde defeats the worm. He doesn't believe that he has a chance, so he turns to run from the worm, trips on a rock just as the worm lunges to swallow him whole. He falls in the right position so his horn spears the worm right through one of its 16 eyes, which kills it instantly. So let's go and roll the dice to see who defeats the worm. A 1. So option 1, which means that Bob defeats the worm. So he flies above the worm, raining down his needle-sharp tail spines. And when that doesn't work, he grabs the worm and lifts it partway off the ground to drop it down and spear it on some jagged rocks where all its inner goo spills out and steams away in the early morning light. So that's the end of that installment. So stay tuned for Objective 4, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.